Hello everyone, and thanks to Republica for having us here despite the difficult circumstances. I'm Aria.
I'm Silvia.
I'm Tommaso.
I'm Francesca.
I'm Noel.
And we are Clusterduck. Clusterduck is a collective doing research in the fields of design, digital art, and media studies, focusing on the processes and actors behind the creation of internet-related content. In our work, we focus on the subcultural landscape of social media and mostly on internet memes. We are 5 people working and talking every day online, and we relate with more than 40 collaborators around the world, but mostly in Europe.
Our interest in memes resulted in the production of several different projects and presentations. Our first project about memes was called Meme Propaganda, and we consider MemersForFuture as a logical continuation, or perhaps we should say as a consequence of meme propaganda. Meme propaganda was born to deal with the fallout of Trump's presidential victory in 2016. That was probably the moment mainstream media and the bigger public realized for the first time that memes were something more than simple, funny viral images to share with your friends. At the time, the narrative established in mainstream media went more or less like this. A group of trolls created a state called Kekistan to support their fascist ideology through memes. Trump didn't lose the opportunity to get publicity for his campaign, while Hillary declared Pepe the Frog a symbol of hate to be compared to a swastika. Trump won the elections also thanks to meme magic. Personally, we find this narrative to be completely inaccurate, so we wanted to offer a different solution against censorship and against the widespread feeling of impotence represented by the idea that the left can't meme. It is with the idea of creating new narratives and reclaim our beloved meme characters that we decided to start the interactive exhibition and online operation Meme Propaganda. At the time, we also shared with others the impression that memes were becoming a language far too powerful to be ignored, and that it was in our interest to spread the knowledge about them. Our aim was to generate awareness about the communicative potential that memes can have, not only for politics, but for instance also for marketing, which we consider just another form of propaganda. So we made a call to ask meme lords and artists to design new propaganda posters inspired by vintage propaganda images of every sort and origin. We made the posters freely downloadable, so everyone could use them, requesting only that people would document their usage and send us the photographs. Posters were used in many cities and during many demonstrations. Here, for instance, you see Paris, Rome, St. Petersburg, Moscow, Rotterdam, London, Madrid, Berlin, to name some. The aim of the project was to raise awareness about how memes can be a form of propaganda, and that is why we brought the project to many places and events around Europe.
So, during meme propaganda, we learned many things, and I'm just gonna try to show a few of those learnings. So one important thing that we found out is that contrary to the still dominating narrative that describes memes as this kind of harmless, funny images that we like to share with our friends, we found confirmation that memes are something that Alex Galloway, for example, calls ideological machines. And I quote, memes seem to be operating almost entirely under what we used to call ideology. The power and interest that memes have is entirely due to their status as ideological machines, which doesn't mean that they are useless, debased, etc. On the contrary, it demonstrates how complex and powerful they are. So this multi-layered character of memes, of course on the surface they work as simple funny images, but they are much more. There's always much more signification and much more meaning that is carried by these apparently harmless images. That's why they are so powerful, so effective. And another interesting thing that we found out is what Anh Xiaomina calls physical co-presence. And she describes this as the physical and the digital blending seamlessly with each other and meeting online on online social networks. So this is also something very important that we found confirmation of. There is always this co-presence of the physical, of the offline and the online aspect.
So what happened afterwards? Let's say that what we call the dirty fairy tale has now become a sad true story. 2 years later, memes are indeed used at demonstrations, and we wanted to dive into how this is done. How memes are used, remixed, and reposted. To do so, and because as a collective we embrace this cause, we chose to focus on the global climate justice movement and their use of memes, or as we discovered, their creation of new memes. So the project developed in 3 different stages, which we are going to show now.
So, stage 1, the participant observers. At first, we observed. We went to demonstrations and we asked our network to reach out with pictures of memes coming from demos. These are some of the pics that we received. The one on the left came from Florence, while the one on the right came from Turin. Here you see Bologna on the left and Chicago on the right. The Lorax was one of the most popular figures, seen on many protest signs, usually with a modified version of the original poem, going like this: I am the Lorax, I speak for the trees, deny climate change, or something similar, and I will break your fucking knees. We started to notice that internet memes were used as protest signs, as for example happening here with the famous This Is Fine format with the doggo. Or in these panels here, these are very popular formats. On the left we see this is a pigeon format, and on the right we see the drake format, which is always used to juxtapose a right and wrong choice, a mechanic common to many other formats as well. Classical memes and formats aside, while observing the material we got, we noticed something interesting and new.
We noticed that new formats were being developed. Not internet memes in the classic sense, but memes nonetheless. Combinations of text and pictures that worked as fixed formats being collectively appropriated, reinterpreted, and remixed. This is one of the most popular formats, always featuring the sentence, "The planet is getting hotter than someone." Usually this someone is young Leo DiCaprio, but sometimes is also my imaginary boyfriend. One other new meme born during the Friday for Future demos is the one with the dinosaur, which became very popular and was seen a lot lately as well, for instance during the COVID pandemic and the digital strike. Of course, it represents the idea of mass extinction. As with classical internet memes, pop culture references are very used, like here for instance, with the famous phrase "winter is not coming," a parody of Game of Thrones, but also a warning about global warming. Likewise, we can see that there is a widespread use of characters from comics, most famously The Simpsons. Lisa is very present, and like in the series, she represents the young, idealistic activist accusing society. But we also see a lot of the other characters, like Homer and Bart. Another instant classic among the climate justice memes is the anthropomorphic version of Planet Earth, which is very popular and is usually depicted with captions like "Act now," "There is no planet B," or "YOLO," "The planet lives only once." It is interesting to notice that some memes have been completely appropriated by the Friday for Future movement, as the Lorax here, whom we mentioned before, who being the protectors of trees was somehow destined to become a kind of totemic figure. This is just a fraction of the memes we noticed. There were many others which we will keep documenting as we go forward in our project.
During stage 2, we started to realize that the production mechanism of these memes is substantially different from the one we find in the classic meme ecosystem. In order to understand what we are talking about, we tried to draw a very rough conceptual scheme. So here we see what we call the classic memetic ecosystem. Online communities, which include people like full-time memers, creative gamers, and so on, create, remix, and appropriate content that later get posted in digital platforms. From here, the content goes back to what we call IRL world. IRL means in real life, but here it means people and channels that are not an active part of internet communities and subcultures. As you can see, the arrow is going just in one direction, suggesting an extractivist relationship. So the value of the content gets produced at the top by digital communities and extracted by the platforms and the mainstream world. The closing of the loop represents the reappropriation of mainstream culture by online communities. How does the content ecosystem we observe in the climate change justice movement differ from this? Well, the most substantial difference is that here is not only the online communities producing memes, rather it is a true circle, a loop. So we have images being created both online and offline, being shared through platforms, and being remixed both online and offline. It is also interesting to note the different role of platforms. While in the regular memetic ecosystem, the work mostly the platforms work mostly as machines for extraction value, in the Friday for Future memetic ecosystem, they are used in a way more similar to the concept of the digital commons. As a true public space for critical exchange, to create and strengthen social dynamics and empower people, which we think is the way these platforms should be used. As we have seen, the feedback mechanism between the digital world and the so-called real world are so intertwined, they are almost indistinguishable. To sum up, we have memes that are produced in the material world, then documented and shared in the digital world, for instance through Instagram, and then reshared and remixed in the physical world. When we understood this, we knew that we had to find a way to become a part of it, a part of the loop. So we decided to enter in this feedback loop. Inspired mostly by the Friday for Future movement, we started to draw illustration, which represent the new memes we are talking about. Basically, we observed which were the most popular formats and drew them on our own style. And since the movement has now moved completely in the digital dimension due to the coronavirus outbreak, we decided to share them and make them freely accessible to anyone who wants to use them and repost them.
Stage 3, give back. So the final stage was about giving something back to the loop. We decided to do this by creating original content, so we put together a series of original posters with the idea to give them to the communities for free. So anybody who is interested can download them and do what they want with them. We call 6 artists for different geographical location and different online bubbles. Here you see the first 2. On the left, Angelica Lee, coming from Colombia, and on the right, Carla Scotto, who is based in Australia. These 2 are from people we already worked with during propaganda. Dr. Pira on the left, who is a famous underground comic illustrator from Italy, and Jules Durand on the right, who is a French designer and type nerd, as well as a member of Clusterduck himself. And these are Shaya Rieli on the left, who is also part of Clusterduck, a Berlin-based Israeli designer and tattoo artist, and on the right, Toby Xuan, who is an illustrator based in Singapore.
Stage 4, we want to. So this is actually the starting point. We started the research project, we set up the social media channels, and we produced the posters and the original content you saw. In the next step, we would like to find ways to get people to use the posters, interact with them, reflect on them. That's why we created a website that went live last week, and it's being publicly launched in these days. So here you can see a screen recording of the website where you can go and have a look at the posters in our nice cube space and read more about the concept. Also, you can interact with not only with the posters, but there is also going to be a drawing room made by Pietro from Super Internet, who is also part of the Clusterduck collective, where anyone can enter and draw. The room is open now, so you can go in and draw your own memes to raise social awareness on climate change. And here you can see the websites to visit for having more important information and participate in the project. And as a follow-up, join the Telegram research chat if you want to be in touch with us and participate in more initiatives, or the Fresh and Simple Clusterduck channel if you prefer. So, bye!
Bye!
Bye.
All aboard the bubble ship, bubble up before the ink, you know how we always fly. So across the desert